All right, it's good to be with you again today. And today I'm excited to talk with you a little bit about how to support children in a positive direction. As you can imagine, for many couples, their approach to parenting and being on the same page in their parental approach is extremely important. And it's important for the health and wellness of the child, that we're able to give the child kind of the best experience possible as they're growing and developing and learning in the home, that we're able to be in a unified situation for our approach with children. But also it's critical to the health and the wellness of the marital relationship, that relationship between spouses, right? That they're on the same page and that they're approaching children from an angle that gives their marriage and their relationship growth, health, and wellness also, because being at odds on how to manage situations with children can be a high stressor situation for many couples. So we want to talk about that a little bit today, and I look forward to getting into that with you more. So let's jump into that topic of supporting children. And specifically today, I want to talk about the ideas of using positive and negative reinforcement in your work with your children, and how to do that in a productive way, and how to do that in a way that promotes the type of behavior that you're looking for. That good, healthy, well-developed child is our goal. So let's start with a couple of definitions, and let's begin with positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is any time you're giving somebody something that they're motivated by, right? So it's kind of learning enough in your relationship with your child to know what they're motivated by, and then utilizing that thing as a leveraging tool in order to help encourage the behavior that you're wanting. So for example, if they're really into soda, then you might say, hey, I'll take you down to Sodalicious and we'll get you a soda if you are able to finish your homework by dinner time every day this week. That's an example of a positive reinforcer, right? So if the child really likes that type of treat, you can use a treat like that. You're giving them that treat, you're adding that treat to them. That's why we call it positive. You're giving them something or adding something to their world that they're motivated by. And you're using that as a positive reinforcer, as a leveraging tool to motivate them toward a behavior that you're looking for. So positive reinforcements can be anything that you're giving another person that's motivating to them, right? You're offering it kind of as an incentive or as a reward. So sometimes people use treats for that. Sometimes people use quality time for that, right? If the child really enjoys one-on-one time to go for a drive, go to the Nickelcade or our arcade, to be able to play some games with you. Sometimes it's points. So kids like point charts sometimes. They like to earn stars or points toward a goal, a reward at the end of the week. Whatever that thing is, sometimes it's screen time. Many kids these days like to be reinforced with screen time. That's a big incentive to them. It can be an extended curfew. It can be going out with friends this evening or this weekend. It can be anything along those lines. A lot of times people ask me, what are the best positive reinforcements? What are the reinforcers that work the best with children? And really the answer to that question depends on your child. Every child's a little bit different. Every person's a little bit different. And as a result of that, some of us are more motivated by some things than other things. So learning your child well enough to know what are those things that they seem to spend the most time invested in, they seem to be most interested in, that they enjoy to do the most during their free time. You start to learn a little bit about what are these positive reinforcers, and those are the things that you want to use as a leveraging tool. Now, I don't mean leveraging tool as just manipulating your child. That's not the goal. Our goal isn't to manipulate our children or put one over on our child. Our goal is to invest in the growth, the health, and the wellness of our child, And the best way to do that sometimes is finding out what those things are that they're motivated by, and utilizing those as positive incentives or reinforcements when they're investing in their own growth, their own wellness, their own responsibility, their own follow through in a way that matters to you as a parent, right? Which is our role. Our role is to help develop our children and to help encourage their positive growth and development. And using positive reinforcements is one of the most effective ways to do that. Finding out what they're incentivized by and then utilizing those things to encourage the type of growth, wellness, development that we're looking for. So you can use positive reinforcements for a variety of things. You can use it to help them get homework done. You can use it to encourage their participation in chores at home. You can use positive reinforcers to encourage the type of behavior you're looking for between siblings. You know, if you're looking for less conflict or more positive treatment of one another, you can use it for things like making sure that a room stays clean. Whatever those things are that you're trying to encourage this child to do, to grow and develop, positive reinforcers are a great way to do it. Now, the thing that separates a positive reinforcer and a bribe is that you want the positive reinforcer to be something that's pretty consistent or steady that they can look forward to, right? So something that would be implemented on a regular basis, like the stars, for example, that you use on a point sheet, right? It's something that's applied on a regular basis, that they learn that as they behave or act in these certain ways, there's going to be these consistent and reliable reinforcers tied to their behavior. So I use the example of the Sodalicious, right? That on a weekly basis, every week that you're done by dinner time with your homework, we'll go get a soda on a Friday, right? And so the child's able to look forward to that through the week, that they're going to get that one-on-one time with dad to go get a soda at the end of that week, because they did really well in getting their homework done on a consistent basis. Bribes are a little bit more spontaneous and they're a little less reliable. So we kind of throw them out as a last-ditch effort in order to get the behavior we want from our children. It's not so helpful in reinforcing your child with bribes, right? Like, so for example, I'm frustrated, my kid's not sweeping the floor. I've tried everything, it's at the end of the day, and I'm like, look, I'll let you stay up 10 minutes later, and watch a show if you'll just please sweep the floor, right? And I bribe them in that moment, a spontaneous thing. It's not a set thing that we're doing on a regular basis. And that can be helpful once in a while to get the behavior that I want out of a child. But if I'm using bribes all the time, again, the difference between a bribe and a positive reinforcer, the type of reinforcement we're talking about, is that with a bribe, they're spontaneous, they're in the moment, they're not well thought out, and I'm just throwing something at them to try to get them to cooperate with me. The reason they're not helpful long term is because sometimes your child will then become trained, conditioned, we call it in psychology. They'll become conditioned or trained to want a bribe anytime they're going to do a positive thing, right? So they'll learn that if they can kind of take you to your wit's end, that you'll finally throw something out there that they might want. And so it makes it hard sometimes for you to get cooperation out of them on a regular basis if you're using bribes all the time, because they'll hold out until they get the bribe and then they might comply, right? And we don't want to train them in that way. We don't want them to look for some sort of a bribe anytime we ask them to do something good, which is kind of where negative reinforcers come in. So we just talked about positive reinforcers. Positive reinforcers are any time that we find a thing that motivates or incentivizes our child, and we work that in a consistent way to utilize those to motivate the type of growth behavior we're looking for. And negative reinforcers are kind of the exact opposite, right? So negative reinforcers are anything that I'm taking away from my child that's motivating for them to have. In other words, they wouldn't want that thing taken away, right? Whether it's time with friends, whether it's reducing screen time, whether it's losing a certain toy or a certain privilege, right? It's anything that I'm doing that takes away an incentive, something that they're incentivized by. It's taking that thing away that encourages them to want to do the thing that they're meant to do in order to keep that thing, right? So we call that negative reinforcement, the taking away of something, right? So the threat that, hey, if you come home and you're not getting your schoolwork done, and instead you're just jumping on the Xbox, we might need to take the Xbox away, right? And then the child's not happy about that because they're really invested in the Xbox. And then the solution then becomes, okay, then what I need for you to do, I'd love for you to keep the Xbox too, because I love you and I know you love playing on the Xbox. But we can only do that when you can be responsible with your schoolwork. So here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow, you need to come home and you need to work on your homework. And if you can do that, you can have extra Xbox time before dinner, right? Like whatever time between when you're done with your homework and dinner, you can play on the Xbox, right? But if you're not going to do that, if you're going to come home and you're going to resist doing homework, we're going to take Xbox away for today. Xbox isn't going to happen. So that's an example of a negative reinforcer, right? I'm taking away something that the child prizes, right? I'm not taking it away forever. I'm taking it away temporarily to help motivate that behavior with my child. And that consistent willingness to do something like that is what separates negative reinforcement from blackmail. So blackmailing my child is kind of the antithesis of what using bribes with my child is in the positive reinforcement side, right? So on positive reinforcement, what we don't want to do is bribes. On the negative reinforcement side, what we don't want to do is blackmail, right? Where I'm just throwing out threats all the time, randomly, same type of principle, right? I'm randomly using it, not consistently, and I'm coming up with it in the spur of the moment, right? It's more of a reactive tool. Blackmail is not helpful long term. It really hurts the relationship long term. The child starts to feel like all you're interested in doing is punishing them all the time if you don't get your way. And it's not a great way to build influence with a child. So we don't want to do blackmail all the time, but it is helpful to know what are some of those things that I can limit from my child if they're not willing to comply with some of those things that are in their best interest to grow, to develop, to learn positive behavior, right? So negative reinforcers, taking away something that my child's invested in order to motivate them to do a thing that I need them to do. So positive and negative reinforcers. Now the reason that we want a combination of both positive and negative reinforcers is because if I just use negative reinforcers, one risk that I run is that my child might start to perceive me as the enemy, right? I don't really highlight positive behavior. I don't really reward positive behavior. I don't really celebrate positive behavior ever. I'm just focused on their negative behavior. And when they're doing something that's not good, I'm constantly trying to take something away from them, which doesn't feel really good in a relationship. It doesn't feel like I'm super invested in them or that I care for them. It just seems I'm looking for opportunities to punish them. So I need to be careful not to overuse negative reinforcers. The other issue that negative reinforcers can create is if I'm not careful and I'm constantly taking away things, pretty soon I might run out of things to take away. And if I run out of things to take away, now I've put the child in a what do I have to lose mentality. And when your child gets in a what else do I have to lose mentality, you've already taken it all away, we really start to lose any motivation or incentive they have, maybe to comply and to work with you as a parent. So we want to be careful not to overuse negative reinforcers because you might accidentally cross off the list all the things that motivate your child. They slowly, one by one, lose them. They lose screen time, and then they lose time with their friends. And then they lose being able to stay up a little bit later, and then they lose their favorite stuffed animal, and then they lose right all the way to the point where there's nothing really left that they're incentivized by because you've already taken it all away. So you want to be really careful about that, overusing negative reinforcers. The other thing that you want to be careful about with negative reinforcers is you want short time frames, right? So a child or an adolescent, they're classic for being caught up in this moment will be my forever. They have a harder time kind of seeing long term, right? So if you use a consequence that says you can't have the Xbox for a month, for example, right? You have a conflict with them. They're being super non-compliant and resistant and defensive, right? Maybe even acting in terrible or dysfunctional ways. And you use a consequence that says your Xbox is gone for a month. Well, for a child or an adolescent, that 30 days might as well be 30 years. They have a really hard time thinking longer term than about a week. right? And even a week is stretching it for a really young child, somebody who's 5 to 8 to 10 years old, right? So you want to be careful about not making your consequences too long. We want them to be shorter in term, right? So for example, the Xbox, losing it for the day, right? If you can't interact with your brother in a positive way, we're going to pull the Xbox away today. We're going to be done with the Xbox for today, right? That's a good way to use the Xbox as a negative reinforcer, right? And if they're non-compliant, right, they continue to kind of fight with each other and create contention, the Xbox might need to go away for today, right? Versus, hey, if you can't behave with your brother, the Xbox is going away forever, right? Because they may in that moment push that boundary, and you might have to follow through with that negative reinforcer. And if you follow through with the negative reinforcer and take that Xbox away for 10 years, you no longer have that negative reinforcer, right? Like they have nothing left to lose in that thing. Versus if I take it away for today and I can reintroduce it tomorrow, okay, hey, it's Xbox time. You guys did a good job. You got done with your schoolwork. Yes, we'll pull out the Xbox. You can play on the Xbox until dinner. But remember, yesterday you lost the Xbox. You lost the Xbox because you kept fighting with each other, right? So try not to lose the Xbox today. I know you love the Xbox. I love you. I want you to be able to use the Xbox today, right? So we've got it reintroduced really quickly back. This is with a child that's like, 6, 8, 10 years old, something like that, right? With an adolescent, you can expand that to a few days, right? So with an adolescent, sometimes there needs to be a little bit longer consequence, like a curfew, for example, right? So for the rest of this week, I need you home by 8 p.m. What? I can't believe it. Why would you do that? Well, because you stayed out till 12:30 last night, and you know the curfew on a weekend is midnight, right? And they're like, yeah, but on a weekday, I'm supposed to stay out till 9:30 or 10 or whatever, right? You're just like, yes, I understand that, but this weekend, right, you stayed out till 12:30. I couldn't get a hold of you. You didn't contact me and let me know what the issue was, right? And so we're not going to do that again, right? We'll try again this weekend, but until then, right, until next Saturday, I need you home by 8 p.m. And if you can be home by 8 p.m., so that's a negative reinforcer. I took away the later curfew, the 9 p.m. on a weekday or whatever. I made it 8 p.m. So I took away that later curfew, but I offered him a positive reinforcer coming this weekend, right? We'll try again this weekend if between now and then you can be home at the time that you're supposed to. Right now, that's 8 p.m., right? So you took away the later curfew, but you offered the positive reinforcer. Within a week's time, you can earn this back if you can cooperate with me and follow through with this consequence, right? So that's the use of a negative reinforcer and then offering a positive reinforcer for this weekend. That way, with those shorter turnaround times, week over week, a child can attempt the behavior that you're asking of them and fail, and attempt and fail, and attempt and fail. But they can attempt and make another attempt at least within a week's time, right? If I take away that thing for a month, the next time they can be successful in earning that positive thing they're looking forward to is a month from now. And a month from now might as well be forever, and you're going to lose motivation in your child, right? So trying to make those terms shorter. Now you can't have it too short, 10 minutes. You're going to lose the Xbox for 10 minutes. That won't work real well for a teenager. They'll be like, pester my brother, lose the Xbox for 10 minutes. Yeah, pestering my brother's worth losing the Xbox for 10 minutes, right? But with a really young child, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, 10 minutes can be a good time duration. That can be a good time duration to have a timeout. That can be a good time duration to lose access to a toy, and then being able to reintroduce it again in 10 minutes if, as a positive reinforcer, if the child's in a situation that they're complying better. So really trying to take a look at that. But even with teenagers, I'd be really cautious about taking things away for months at a time. You really want to do a week most of the time probably, and maybe stretching to 2 weeks in special circumstances. Now there might be a few things that you take away much longer term if there's a really severe behavior. Like let's say, for example, my son goes out to a party and he's drinking, right? And this is the second time that's happened. We've made it really clear what our family rules are. He might lose privilege to hang out with that friend for a couple of months, right? And from the angle of, hey, you mean a lot to me, this is a big thing to me. This isn't a small thing. This isn't missing your curfew by 10 or 15 minutes, right? This is you drinking with your friend in a way that's not safe, not okay for us as your parents, right? And as a result of that, we're going to lose this privilege to hang out with that friend for a little while. So you might use some more longer term ones in situations like that, but you really want to limit the use of those long-term negative reinforcers for special circumstances, right? Not the everyday things that are causing you trouble, the homework, the chores, things like that. Because we don't want to cross off too many positive incentives by taking it all away, right? And if they can't get any of it back for a month and they have nothing to lose, we're in trouble, right? So I'm a big fan of mixing that up, learning what those things are that they're incentivized by, and learning what those things are that they don't want to lose, and using a combination of both of those so that you don't run out of negative reinforcers too quickly, but also so that you're being cautious to reward good behavior often. Now, rewarding and celebrating good behavior is part of how a child learns self-esteem. It's part of how they learn that they can do things good, right? Like it helps build your relationship with them. It creates fond and happy feelings in the interaction with them, right? So learning what those things are that they enjoy and using them to celebrate with them as they do well in life, this is really helpful for their identity, their self-esteem, and building a relationship with you, a positive relationship with you as a parent, right? So if you did only positive reinforcers and there was never a negative reinforcer, you could run the risk of creating an entitled child. Entitled children typically become entitled, so kind of snobby or prideful or entitled. They become that way because there's never any negative consequences in their life, or there's very few of them, right? So if you were to lean too much on the positive reinforcement side and you weren't ever willing to take away something that mattered to the child due to negative behavior, you could set a child up to feel entitled to rewards all the time and never kind of experiencing a consequence, a natural consequence to their behavior. So balancing those two, a balance of positive and negative reinforcers is key. Now, one final thing before we close up this video for today, and I appreciate you being with us today and learning about this principle. One final thing is this idea that relational influence is found in relational strength. So if you want influence with a child or anyone, a coworker, a spouse, anybody else, relational influence, having influence in the life of another person, is found in the strength of your relationship with that person. So the more you're investing in a close, connected, emotionally connected relationship with another person, the more influence they're likely to give you in their lives. So if you run into a situation where you feel like you're losing influence in the life of your child, as parents, it's helpful to take a look at what are some ways we can make deposits in our relationship with them separate from the negative behavior that we're running into, right? So that you're not always just leaning on positive and negative reinforcers to kind of behaviorally modify your child, but you're also relationally investing in that child. So what that can look like is seeking out more one-on-one time with your child, right? So outside of the positive and negative consequences going on around the behavior you're struggling with, once in a while approaching and saying, hey, will you come throw a ball with me? I'd love to throw a ball in the backyard. Or, hey, I'm going to go for a walk. You want to come for a walk with me? Or you want to go for a drive with me? Or, hey, I'm going to go run some errands. You want to come with me? Maybe we'll pick up a treat while we're there, right? So things that are completely separate from the behaviors that you're rewarding or that you're having consequences for, that invest in the relationship, that say you matter to me, I love you, I care about you, I'm thoughtful of you, right? That you're an important person to me, separate from all your performances, good or bad, right? That's how you invest in a relationship. That's how you invest in relational strength. And that relational strength, the stronger my relationship is with somebody, the greater influence they'll give me. And since there's no such thing as complete control over another person's behavior, if you have questions about that, you can just look at potty training. Children teach us really quickly that we don't have any control in the potty training process. So since control isn't really a thing that we can ever have absolute over another person, our next best place to be is influence. We want to be highly influential people in the lives of our children. And as couples, we want to work together to influence their lives for good. And that influence is found through relational strength, right? So if you're having a tough time influencing your child's decisions, take a look at ways in which you can invest in their lives. Okay, so if you like these principles, if these are helpful to you and you would like to learn more about these principles, we have a video course called Supporting Children that would be excellent to check out. I go into a lot more details about these principles, and I share additional principles that I haven't brought up today that are really helpful in supporting your children in a positive direction and trying to be on the same page as husband and wife, as parents, trying to be on the same page in supporting your children's growth and development and wellness, and avoiding some of the traps that couples can fall into that create divisions in their relationship with one another. So check out the Supporting Children. You might also check out the Optimal Growth video course. Optimal Growth is all about helping yourself and other people grow and utilizing growth promoting techniques and principles toward that growth. So check out that video as well. I think you'd really enjoy both of them if you're enjoying the content in this video today. It's so good to be with you. Comment below with any thoughts, feelings, questions you have in parenting. We love to get in a dialogue about those and answer those questions. So feel free to comment. If there's other things that have to do with parenting, co-parenting, raising children, any of those topics that you'd like to see us present on, go ahead and comment that in the comments below as well. We love to take a look at those. Otherwise, like this video, subscribe to our channel, share this content with anybody you know that might benefit from it. We really love to create this free, easily accessible information for couples everywhere to strengthen their relationship and improve their family dynamic. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and we look forward to being with you again soon. Take care.